Now, up until recently, we've been reacting to alerts that were tripped up by UC Diagnostics. So, as an example, we had that packet loss issue where we are investigating based off of an alert. But you might be faced with a situation where individual users, say like somebody important, like a president or a CEO, they're seeking out us and asking why they had poor quality experiences on their calls. Now, there aren't always active alerts that get tripped up by single, very one specific individual calls. So what do we really do? Well, in those instances, what we'd actually want to do is make use of the investigation feature within UCD. So let's go ahead and do that now. We're going to go to the top here, and we're going to hit Investigate and go to Sessions. Now, there's a couple ways of interpreting this data, but really these session options or these search options that we have available to us are pretty specific, really. Now, base site, whenever I hit this drop down, this is things that we're looking at that are specific to how we have UCD set to be monitoring. So for example, we have a Dallas, a London, and a New York site for sure configured. I also see San Francisco here. But we're going to pretend that we maybe just, for whatever reason, don't enter in the site name, even though we know what site is affected. We also want to say that we're not going to entertain the idea of searching by a specific UCD module, like this UCDP module here. We're just going to say keep it at the very global level, the UCDM, or the manager. Now, in terms of SSID or BSSID, this is something specific to searching within a network. In this case, we do have undefined here, but in terms of the search results, actually keeping this here will affect our search. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that out of our field. And we can see that auto sets to this blank little indicator saying all, and that's fine. Now, in terms of our call, we can search for a call either bidirectionally or unidirectional. In terms of ease of use for searching, it's really just best to keep it as bidirectional because you're assuming the call had two-way audio or two-way traffic. From and to. For this demonstration, we're not going to pretend that you know the user's username. This is so that we can get more results to see if other users were affected by similar behavior. Same with source address and destination. Now this is where things start to get interesting though. In terms of record type, we have QSR and QoE. QoE is really something, actually we can see the description right here, it's really something that's tied to getting QoE information post-call from the SDN API for Skype for Business type calls. So what I'm going to do though is, because I don't want to really see QoE information, I want to see things happening in real time or things that were seen by a UCDP or UCDA on the network, I'm going to go ahead and keep it as QSR. Now session type, this is actually where we specify what type of call it was. We can see we have some pretty specific options here. In this case, we're going to say that we know it was at least a voice call. That'll help filter down some of the results we get. So we select voice. Now event type and termination reason, those are things that we'll come back to later. But for now, event type, this is really the type of event that was observed in the call. I know, great description, right? But I mean, you recall that we had that packet drop or that packet loss alert that we were investigating. This is where we basically specify something like a degradation score or an alert that was seen in the active alerts view, but can also be searched by here. Now in this case, we're going to pretend that we don't know. We're going to say all, which basically says just show me anything and any type of event within these parameters. And then termination reason, I'm going to go ahead and say that we're going to keep this as all. We'll actually come back to this a little bit later. For now, let's just keep termination reason at all. Now time frame, custom time frame. We can change this back if we wanted to. We could say past 5 minutes, past 15, or past hour. Let's actually just do that. We'll just go ahead and say previous hour and see what we get. So I'm going to say submit now that we have our query filled out. Okay, and so now we're actually starting to get some call information. Now you might take a look at this too and notice that a lot of the duration is 00. Typically when a call is in session, you might not always see, based off of the type of monitoring system that you have, if it's a Cisco, Microsoft, Avaya, or maybe even you're running some simulations with Perspective, you might not always see a duration, but you will at least see a in progress for termination reason. That means that right now this call is still in progress and there haven't been any actual scores that are coming in yet. So we know that it's not 00 because he did say, or we made sure to specify that it was a bad quality call, not a call that just ended abruptly. So we have some like-minded calls here. We'll pretend that our executive here was Roger B. Now in this case, we can already see that, okay, so we did have some observed degradation occurring here. In fact, already off the bat in this MOS score column, I'm already looking at the fact that his MOS score was a 1.29. Now the way to interpret this too is that 4.13 is typically what UCD sees as the maximum possible MOS score that could have been achieved specifically for this call based off of how it traveled across the network. However, even though it could have gotten a 4.13, it actually came out with the score on the right, which is 1.29. That's bad. That's when our CEO is going and beating down our office door or our cubicle if we have that. Now, in terms of the other information that we see specifically here, I'm already kind of making up my mind about some things here. I do see some high packet loss, but keep in mind this is total packet count. So if there was a lot of packets sent, then this might actually be a red herring. But I am seeing that our jitter discard is 45. So already our jitter score is above 40, which is typically when things start to get affected. If anything, it might not have happened for the entire call, but at least there was a burst that we can at least determine or assume that there was that really affected at least a portion of this call. But for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and drill down into it further. And we'll just go ahead and say show QSR. You can probably see that this is starting to look a little bit familiar here. This is much like reacting to an active alert. Now, some of the differences here, though, are what aspects of the call are actually being captured on. Now, you look at these A, B, and then we have C, D, E, F. And something you might notice, too, is that you can remember from the last video that we said, okay, so I have two letters on the same blank space between these routers. That means there's a capture point here. That's where somebody in deployment went and set up a span configuration either on a network switch to do some port mirroring, or they set up a tap so that they can monitor SIP and RTP traffic on this link. Got that. But then take a look here at the, the destination and source icons, but then also this letter here right next to the icon itself, specifically the one representing the source and the destination. That's C and F. Now you might be looking at that and saying, well, wait a minute, so if these letters are supposed to represent my capture points, what's one doing right there at our destination and our source right at their level? What does that actually mean? Are there span or capture points there? Well, yes and no. In fact, the way to determine this is that because of this icon, we know that the information that was captured was not only from these capture points here, but also because the SDN API information relays client signaling and quality statistics from the client level to our UCD box. So that's a huge feature too, because that means that we can get some more SIP information from these points without having to put a capture point right at their desk, basically. So anyway, taking that into account, this process is really the same as before, albeit this time, because it's a Skype for Business call and the SDN API is in play, we have more information. We can see that we have two capture points. We're also getting some client information. But then we can see, dang it, there's that router again. Same exact one too, I think. Dallas CE1, specifically that link yet again. So let's go ahead and just take a look at our content statistics. Okay, in fact, in this point, we can actually see that we had two areas that were causing some problems. But even regardless of that, we can see that really what this really irons out to is that there was just one area where we can see was affected by here. In fact, something more to note that we actually didn't talk about last time was that take a look at what the gray text above the NetFlow QoS and Topology Queue button really says. Priority queue usage. So really that's already telling us that really the problem was because one of the priority queues, which is a QoS term, one of the priority queues was getting oversubscribed to right off the bat. So we know that already now. We're just going to go ahead and play out the rest of this though. We can see that specifically on points B and C of the network, specifically this link here and at the client level was where the issues were experienced. Because remember, these are red letters but not icons indicating that there was an event that took place here. That means this is really based off of our capture points where the suffering on our network started to happen. Okay, so really this was pretty bad. Down to 1.29 yet again. And then based off of what it could have had possible, we have some information that was captured here, but we can see the loss, and it's really red here because it's closest to the user, was really where it took a beating. In fact, 23% again here across those two links. So let's go ahead and go back up here. And looking at this event yet again, we can see, okay, priority queue use alert. Thank you, UCD. I know now to look into QoS because I'm going to bet that our priority queue usage was pretty bad. And dang it, yep, there it is again. There's that SIP at 10% only, and we're still hitting 11.2% traffic on that pipe. So we're not up to snuff. We don't have the priority QoS size really configured on this pipe correctly still. If anything right now, this is more a better exercise in determining that that issue is still present than really acting like it's brand new. But either way, I now know still this is yet just another issue that was caused by some packet loss, specifically because our QoS sizing is not correct on this link. So we either need to reconfigure QoS or add ourselves some more bandwidth on that pipe.